Congressman Andy Ogles joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline as well. Congressman, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. I know you were just on yesterday with Chris Hand. A lot of news has changed since you were here yesterday I think it was 9 or the 10 o'clock hour. So let's get into some of the news out there because there is a lot. Now, yesterday, Kevin McCarthy announcing that, yes, indeed, it is time for the much-awaited impeachment inquiry beginning there in the House of Representatives. Were you surprised that he didn't call for a House vote? He basically has told the relevant committees it's time to do this. He didn't call for a House vote like he said that he was going to. Do you have any reason, any thoughts as to why he decided not to call the House vote?
Well, yes, and I'm partly to blame for that. So I have, articles of impeachment that have been submitted, but they were written in the form of a privileged motion, meaning that if we didn't move forward quickly, I could lay those on the desk, and it would force a vote on the House floor. So myself, Matt Gaetz, and a few others said, look, when we get back, here's your fair warning. If you don't announce that we're moving forward, if we don't see a clear path to impeaching Joe Biden, we're going to pull the trigger, we're going to go nuclear, and we're going to force a vote on this. And so it's not surprising. I think this was McCarthy showing his leadership, that the evidence is overwhelming at this point, and that we're going to start an inquiry. We're going to lay it before the House of Representatives, that's the American people, and then the American people can decide. So I'm not surprised at all. And quite frankly, when he initially said that he was going to call for a vote on the inquiry, I thought that was a little cumbersome anyway. Because it's clearly in his purview to just go ahead and move forward. Because, look, at the end of the day, an inquiry is simply gathering more facts, more data to support what we know is true. So not surprising at all. So I commend McCarthy for doing so.
Where are the Democrats on this? I know that, and I've asked other Republicans this as well. I know that you folks, you talk, there's like official conversations, and then there's, the elevator conversations, maybe the conversations in the gym or the barbershop, whatever it is, getting your shoes shined. And so I know that sometimes Republicans will tell me, well, some of our friends on the other side, they have legit concerns and they're worried about, X, Y, or Z regarding their own president. Has there been any conversation about where the Democrats are in the House on this? I mean, there's got to be some moderates over there that realize that there is an abundance of evidence already going into this impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, I think, there's a handful. There's not many anymore, Democrats that you could consider moderate in the House. But, I think their bigger concern is, quite frankly, is that Joe Biden's poll numbers are historically low for a president at this point in their tenure. The vice president's numbers are even worse, and that they both are going to be a millstone around their necks when it comes to reelection. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I'll say it here that the Democrat Party is going to have to switch out their candidates. Gavin Newsom has said it's not going to be him. And really the only person that leaves that has a national fundraising apparatus is Michelle Obama. And so, and there's one person that could get their party excited about the presidential race and do so in short order. It would be Obama or Michelle. And so, don't be surprised if at the last minute she steps in riding a horse to save her party, and she'll be a formidable candidate, I'll be honest.
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, you've got, and I've covered this, you've got all of these operatives from the Obama administration currently working in the Biden administration anyway. The Obamas live just a couple of miles, if that, from the White House, one of the only presidents to stay in Washington, D.C. I believe the only president to stay in Washington, D.C. After his terms were up. And even though Michelle Obama has said many, 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 many times she hated her 8 years in the White House, you're right. It wouldn't surprise me if she decided to jump in to, as you say, be the savior of the country, because let's face it, especially if it's Donald Trump, she would take great pride and pleasure in doing whatever she could to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. And so, I believe there's other people. First of all, I believe that Gavin Newsom, even though he says one thing, we all, no offense, but politicians tend to lie. So I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to jump in anyway. You've also got Governor Whitmer out there in Michigan, whose name has also been mentioned a time or two. However, I agree with you, Congressman, that Michelle Obama is absolutely the slam dunk, because here's the thing, is that it's not like she has an actual record that she can run on. You know what I mean? Which is perfect, because, Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, their states are train wrecks. And so for, Michelle Obama, she is the perfect choice if she would actually consider to do it, because she really doesn't have obviously a legislative record to run on. And I apologize for monologuing here during this interview. Let's talk about a few other things. Impeachment inquiry, we've already tackled that. Let's talk about these accusations against the CIA. I'm going to cover this in depth coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, but big accusations against the CIA that they tried to pay off scientists who said that COVID started in that Wuhan lab. Now, this to me is not a big shock, because, of course, the CIA trying to protect Dr. Anthony Fauci, perhaps trying to protect, if this is true, trying to protect America's reputation abroad as well, because, nobody within the government wants to admit that we were paying, that Wuhan lab to come up with this gain of function research. What do you know about this big story this morning about the CIA trying to pay off these scientists?
Well, I really think that, one, it's appalling. Let's be clear. The where this virus came from has huge implications on a geopolitical front, from a liability front. You're tracing it back and perhaps coming up with some sort of treatment or protocol sooner. We could talk about that ad nauseum. And the fact that the U.S. government was complicit in trying to cover it up speaks to the other problem that we have in this country, is that now we have a separate government. We have a two-tier justice system. Look, you can like Trump, you can dislike Trump. It doesn't matter. But the fact that you have district attorneys abusing their office to go after an individual is troubling. The fact that a family man, a pastor, is praying on a sidewalk and he's arrested by the FBI for simply praying in front of an abortion clinic. And meanwhile, you have the Biden family that is accepting tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments through all these shell companies. There's no purpose or reason for having all this money, and they're going to get off scot-free. He's got gun and drug charges, Hunter does, and again, there's a separate set of justice for them. This is another symptom of a problem we have in this country, something that our founding fathers warned us against, that you have this administrative state, and that if Congress, the watchdog, the pit bull, who has the power of the purse, if we're not doing our job, if we're not watching the gate, that the administrative state will take over. And that's what we're seeing happening and unfolding in front of our very eyes. It should be concerning. It's appalling. And I expect to see lots of hearings. And quite frankly, I would like to see people go to jail over this.
648 on WTN. Let me ask you about the budget process. I know that not a lot of people are focused on this. I am, because I think that both Republicans and Democrats over the years, by and large, have spent way too much money. One of the reasons why you ran was because of this crazed spending of both parties. And are you worried about a government shutdown? I know that there's, clearly the far more conservative wing of the Republican Party, which I believe would be you and others, Chip Roy as well. And then there's the rest of them who just want to keep spending and spending and spending. And, where is the caucus at on the next budget and avoiding a government shutdown?
So I was with the Freedom Caucus yesterday, lots of conservative groups who held a huge press conference talking about we have to control spending in Washington, D.C. We have historic debts. The debt per person per capita is off the charts. And I want to, you hear all of this fear mongering over this idea that the government might shut down. And look, Social Security checks are still going to go out. Veterans benefits are still going to be administered. This idea, quite frankly, if there's a temporary shutdown or a temporary pause in government, it's only the discretionary spending that get put a hold on it. So quite frankly, Congress isn't wasting your money. So at the end of the day, the House of Representatives, that's where you fight, that's where you debate, that's where you argue. Our job is to come up with the best product for the American people, and that product has to include less spending. So I would say, if you're on an airplane, the economy's an airplane, seatbelt sign is on, buckle up, there's turbulence ahead. It's going to be a bumpy ride as we move forward. We've got DOD appropriations today. I expect to see a fight over that. Quite frankly, not because of the appropriations bill itself, but because of all the other appropriations bills that have kind of been set aside. So it's a little tense up here because you've got impeachment, you've got the CIA nonsense, and now appropriations. But I'm up here, I'm fighting, I'm trying to represent the district, and quite frankly, get Washington, D.C. out of Tennessee.
Let me ask you this. I saw this headline. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to cover it today, but the headline is, crime in Washington, D.C. is now so high, locals are driving tiny distances from, a couple of blocks away because they're afraid of, walking the streets of Washington, D.C. You live in Washington, D.C. part-time. Describe for us, and I've only got a minute left, but describe for us the experience of going from Tennessee to Washington, D.C., where crime is out of control and the locals there are afraid to walk the streets, meaning they're driving really short distances because they're afraid of getting mugged or robbed or shot or killed.
I'm just old enough to remember growing up with the Twilight Zone and that eerie opening about this alternate universe that exists. Well, that's Washington, D.C. There's a different set of rules. They play by a different game, and then the crime up here is out of control. That's why I have the home rule where we would actually take away control of Washington, D.C. from, they're constitutionally under the control of Congress. Congress allowed them to elect a mayor and a city council, but the streets are littered. Crime is out of control. Kids aren't going to school, and our national parks aren't necessarily safe. And so my goal is to take back those reins, straighten out this mess, not only from a budget standpoint, but even at the local level here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Andy, and appreciate you joining us here on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 651.